chat. We are recording this echo session for educational and quality improvement purposes. By participating, you are consenting to being recorded, and if you do not wish to be recorded, please disconnect from the session. Echo is a community of practice. We really hope that everyone participates a lot, and we have our real situations, real solutions discussion at the end where we will go into breakout rooms, and we really encourage everyone to get to know each other and contribute with their insights. So this echo session, we will start with a didactic presentation from Erin Barton for about from 1 to 2, and then from 2 to 2:30, we will have a short presentation on a case study and go into breakout rooms to discuss that and offer solutions. We ask that you protect individual privacy. If you're using any examples or sharing information, please de-identify any names or personal information. We ask that you rename your Zoom profile to your name and your organization, just so we can get to know you and where you're from. Throughout the presentation, if you have any questions or comments, you can just unmute and start talking, or you can raise your hand and Erin will see that, or you can send a question in the chat and me and Faustine will make sure that that gets read out loud. You will get a certificate of attendance for participating today. In order to get it, you do have to fill out our short feedback survey. It's really helpful for you all to fill out the feedback survey just so we can know what other topics we can include, what you are liking about the echo sessions, and what we can do better. So we'll make sure to get that email to you. Just make sure to fill out the survey. We will be sending the link throughout the chat and emailing it to you after the session. We have a Canvas page and a website. If you have trouble accessing the Canvas page, you can reach out to Faustine. Her email is on here, or you can find all of our past presentations on our website. If you just search a Utah Pyramid Model, we're under the Project Echo tab, past sessions. If your program is struggling and you would like to present a case study to try and get some feedback from your peers, some possible solutions that you haven't thought of before, we would love for you to present a real situations, real solutions presentation. You can reach out to me at hannah.nelson@usu.edu. Our next session will be October 28th. It'll be the last session of this early intervention series. Same time, 1 to 2:30, and it will be on supporting families that have children with more challenging behaviors in early intervention, and Erin will also be teaching that one. Our presenter today is Erin Barton. She's a great professional in the realm of early intervention and the pyramid model, and we're very excited to have her for her part 2 training. And this is part 2. Her first part was from last month. And if you want to find the resources and the slides to follow along with this, they are up on our Canvas and on our website. So you can find all the downloadable resources there and her slides on there as well. And with that, I will turn the time over to Erin. Thank you everyone for joining today.
Thank you, Hannah. I'm going to share my slides. Okay. Okay, this is part 2. So a continuation of last month when we started talking about kind of the basics and overview of family coaching. And in this, we're really going to dive into what it means to use a strength-based lens. We're going to define family-centered coaching and what it means to coach the entire family and coach from a lens of family support and supporting the family and supporting their infant and toddler, their child's social emotional competence. We're going to talk about specific characteristics of coaching. I'm going to talk about 5 characteristics, but I'm going to go into some details regarding some specific family coaching strategies and supports. We'll end about 10-15 minutes before the hour so that we have plenty of time for questions and comments also. And then, yeah, as Hannah said, next month, not next week, next month, we are going to really dive into how to support families with children who have challenging behaviors, which is kind of a redundant statement because all children engage in challenging behaviors. So it's really going to be about how to prevent challenging behaviors from becoming severe and persistent, and how to support families in recognizing what behaviors are developmentally appropriate. And how to support their children in developing social emotional competence and how to respond to challenging behaviors so they don't become severe and persistent. One of the things that we always talk about when we're talking about family coaching also is to use a strength-based approach. And what I mean by a strength-based approach is that we really see the family as the center of the child's life and the family as fully capable and competent in supporting their child's social emotional development and their child's learning of new skills and the skills that are relevant to be a full participating member of their family. And we always use a very intentional strength-based lens so that we can then maximize the family supports and what the family is already doing well, and then also support the family in building their confidence and their competence in supporting their child's new development and learning of new skills. Specifically, today we're talking about social emotional, and in this series, social emotional skills and social emotional competence. So I think I shared this in one of the very, very first sessions I did a while ago, but I love to do it often because it really helps us think about a framework for how we support families using a strength-based approach. So we have this picture here on the left, and what I want you to think about, and you can unmute yourselves or you can just pop it in the chat. What are the strengths you see here? So obviously it's there are lots of things you see going on in this picture, this illustration. But what are some of the strengths? What are some of the things you see that might be things you can maximize, things that the family, that really are strengths within the family? And obviously this is an illustration and just a picture, but I think it's a good activity to help us kind of think about that framework. Boys, that's right. They have clothes, food, and shelter. The mom is close to the baby. She's there with her kids. Yeah, absolutely. Yep, I agree with all those. They have food, the baby has a bottle, enough space. Yeah, that's a good one. Absolutely. There's space. Child is playing with toys. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. These are all great. Child is fed. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. That's a good one today. Yeah, sacrificing sleep to be with her kids. Mhm. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah, absolutely, right? They appear content. The baby's sleeping, the child's playing. The mom looks like she's watching TV. The baby has a bottle. Yeah. Yeah, they have electricity, they have power. Yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah, those are wonderful. Those are all great examples and things that are really strengths for this family. And I bet when you first looked at this picture, you were like, whoa, there's knives on the floor, the mom's smoking, there's obviously liquor on the table, there's, it's laid out and there's a big TV in the corner. Um, and that's typical and that's normal. It's like we all do that, right? But and so it can be a little bit it is 1 a.m. Yeah, she's up at 1 a.m. for her kids. That's right. It can be easier to kind of go to what are the things that I need to fix or what are the things that are wrong in this situation. And in many ways, we're kind of trained to do that, right? Um, that's kind of, part of our profession. However, our professional practice, really. However, what we really need to shift and what can be really helpful for really truly using family-centered coaching is to maximize those strengths and to really be intentional about focusing on what is the family doing really well right now? What are the things that are going really well for the family? What are the times of day? What are the routines? What is mom really, really good at? What are the ways that the baby and the child and the mom and the caregivers already are connecting? What are the times of day when they're connecting? What are the ways they're connecting? And really maximizing those so that you can fully support the family and so that you can really build caregivers' confidence and confidence. So really focusing on what mom is doing well is a really good way to build her confidence. And that's true for all caregivers, to really build their confidence in their support and their teaching of their children. This is another one we often use to think about what are the things you see here that are strengths, what are the things that are that you might maximize. And I feel like this one's a little bit harder in some ways because there's not as much going on. But what are the things you see here that are strengths, perhaps for this dyad, this mom and baby dyad? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that one, Tiffany. Yeah. Yeah, there's a blanket. Yep. Enough money to travel, close proximity, baby needed to stretch. Yeah, baby may have been in a stroller or being held, needed to stretch. Yeah. Mom needed a break, right? Yeah, could be headed somewhere for support from family, which is, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. These are all really good. And yeah, again, thinking about like we might go right to, oh my goodness, the baby should be held. This is a dirty airport. Why is mom on her phone? And we, that's kind of like I said, we're trained to do that in many ways. But if we stop and really with intention focus on what's happening here in this situation that is good and what are the strengths and what are the things we can build on, what are the ways that we can really support and build mom's confidence and confidence in supporting her baby, really are how we will make a lot of progress and be more effective with family-centered coaching. And yeah, these are great. So mom looks like she has a diaper bag with everything she needs. Baby is on a blanket and seems content. Yeah. Baby is moving, looking around and moving around. Yeah. Yeah, those are all great. Mom seems calm while traveling with a newborn. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, which is important. Yeah, baby's on the floor and safe. Yeah, good, Maria. Yeah. Yeah, and I love the one too about mom maybe recognize that she needed a break, right? Traveling is exhausting, period, especially with children and babies. And we want parents and caregivers to be able to know when they need to take a break. And that's going to better serve the child and the family over time. Absolutely. Maybe mom is just taking a picture. Actually, she absolutely might be. That's right. That's a good point. Okay, so like I said, really love to start with that strength-based approach activity to really help us think about how to really be intentional and know that that might be a shift for us, right? And so we might have to fit that into our own practice really intentionally so that we do have a strength-based approach when we're working with families. Because it can be really easy to just focus on what we're here to do or what we're here to fix or what we're here to support, rather than really thinking through what are the things that caregivers are doing really well. What are the things that we can really maximize and support? So a lot of our work around family coaching within the pyramid model is based on, well, a lot of it is based on many different coaching approaches and coaching models in early childhood and the rest is really based on what we know about adult learning in general. And when we talk about coaching in the pyramid model, a lot of times you'll hear us talk about practice-based coaching. And practice-based coaching is a very specific type of coaching that was developed for use between professionals. So practice-based coaching is how we coach teachers, is how we coach early interventionists, is how we coach within programs, within centers, is how we coach therapists, related service providers. However, we do not use practice-based coaching with families. Practice-based coaching is exclusively for, we can do it in groups, but it's professionals, practitioners only. With families, we use family-centered coaching, which is guided by, as I said, many different models of coaching. So it's guided by practice-based coaching. It's guided by the work of Rush and Sheldon, who you may have heard of, who have written a lot about coaching within early childhood. It's guided by the work of Robin McWilliam, who gave us routines-based intervention and routines-based interviews. It's guided by the work of the developers of the ASQ and the ASQSE, and the AEPS, Diane Bricker, Jane Squires. It's guided by a lot of what we know about routines-based intervention, what we know about family-centered coaching, and what we know about adult learning, but it's very specific to working with families. So it is very much about how to build families' competence and confidence, knowing that families have a lot of things going on, and families are not professionals. This is not their job. And so it is very a specific way of coaching that we talk about within the pyramid model. This is a definition from Rush and Sheldon that guides a lot of this work. And that one thing to remember with families especially is that coaching is voluntary, non-judgmental, and very much collaborative partnership between the practitioner and the important people in a child's life. And the reason why that's really important for us to think about is because, and why it's important for us to recognize that this is very different from when we're coaching other practitioners within like a professional context, a professional role, because it's up to us as the professional, as the practitioner, always to change what we're doing to support families, to meet families where they're at, and to change how we do that so that we can build families' competence and confidence. And that might be different from how we coach other professionals. The formatting got a little bit messed up here, but this support-based family coaching, a lot of this is from the work of Robin McWilliam, who again gave us routines-based interviewing. And what he often talks about in the parts that we embedded into this work is that it's the families and the caregivers who teach the child, who support the child, who are there with the child, and we support the caregivers. It's our job to support caregivers. We recognize that all teaching, all intervention occurs between our visits when we're not there, whether or not we're a classroom teacher or within early childhood, whatever our role is. All intervention occurs when we are not there, even if we're a home visitor, an early interventionist. Remembering that children learn throughout the day. There aren't like specific teaching times at home at all, but that children learn throughout the day. The other thing we often talk about are routines-based interviewing and routines-guided intervention. Knowing, however, that for many families, in fact, probably most families, they don't really think about their life in terms of routines. They just do. Their day can be predictable, and the same things can occur on certain days, but they're not thinking in terms of routines like we are. And so it's really important for us to remember that we might talk about a certain routine, but the family isn't thinking, well, that's how I do the routine. They're just thinking that's how our meals happen. That's how bedtime happens. And that's really important for us to think about when we're thinking about guiding families and supporting families. And this last point is important when we're thinking about the services that we're providing, whatever capacity that is in early childhood, but that it's not really about, and this is true really regardless of what the services are, it's not about the number of minutes, it's not about the number of providers or the number of visits or the number of sessions, but it's really about maximizing intervention. And we do that by coaching families so that families then can support infants, toddlers, and young children throughout the day. So that families recognize that they're learning throughout the day, and we're supporting families in creating a context in which children are learning throughout the day, creating contexts that are predictable and that are nurturing and responsive so that children are learning throughout the day. family-centered coaching is support-based, so it's very much about supporting families and building their confidence and competence, but it's not about building their competencies. It's not like with other providers or other practitioners, we might be looking at specific skills. We might be looking at their competencies. But with families, it's about building their confidence and competence in a support-based way. It's voluntary, right? Always. It's objective. It's based on principles of adult learning, but it's always differentiated to make sure that we're meeting families exactly where they're at. We're really focused on being non-judgmental. It's not about like having families as a client. It's not about saying families are getting like the most services they can. It's really about supporting families. It's really support-based. And it's also not about practitioner-driven activities. So it's not about you know, having the practitioner come in and work directly with the child. It's support-based. It's about supporting the family. And if we really are doing early intervention or home-based supports or home visiting in any capacity, it's not about going in and working directly with the child. It's about going in and supporting the family so that the family can then teach their child across the day, throughout the day, throughout all of the interactions that occur throughout the day. Generally, we talk about 3 different types of support that we provide to families. A lot of it is emotional support, supporting them where they're at, supporting them in supporting their child, building their confidence and competence to support their child. And actually, I'm going to go over each of these. So emotional support is really about building that relationship. And we talked about that in earlier sessions, really using effective communication, building that relationship with the family. We talk a lot about that 5-to-1 ratio, where 5 is positive comments, things that tell the family you're there to support them. You see how hard they're working. You see how competent they are, things that really build their confidence. Figuring out how to communicate with them so that they see you as somebody who's really responsive, taking an interest in the whole family, really helping to build that relationship and maintain that relationship with the whole family, being very friendly and genuinely friendly, and then being sensitive to where they're at and to, you know, what their needs are and what they're doing every day. Material supports are always things we talk about, not bringing in the toy bag and not using a toy bag because that sends the wrong message to the family, but really about bringing in materials that you're either going to leave with the family or materials that help them help their child throughout the day. Always in early childhood, knowing what your community resources are so that you can help families know what community resources exist. You're never accessing those resources for families, but you're helping families identify what resources exist so that they can access them and you can support them in accessing them. And then always also providing informational support that the family is open to and receptive to and wants. So that can be specific information about the child and about maybe the disability or the disability community, maybe. Specific things about child development. Also understanding that milestones are very much culturally driven, so that we're not saying your child has to walk by 12 months, but we're saying, you know, we're going to be looking for the child using these kind of gross motor behaviors. And being really clear that there is often a sequence of development. So we're not going to teach skills, you know, much further than where the child's at, but also recognizing that milestones are culturally driven and what might be important for one family might not be important for other families at certain ages. Again, linking families to resources, being clear about expectations. Another one that's not on here that absolutely, I guess, is a little bit about resources, is helping families understand the system and the early intervention system, the special education system, the early childhood system, so that they can advocate for their child as their child gets ready for school. And then, of course, always providing specific information and guiding the family in using different interventions, different strategies, different practices for supporting their child's social emotional competence throughout the day. I always include this little line because oftentimes this is what intensity used to mean, like 40 hours a week, or, like intensity used to be about time or about number of related service providers or even just providers. But intensity really is about maximizing supports to the family and helping the family support their child throughout the day. So you're maximizing the number of learning opportunities that the child receives, but you're not maximizing the number of minutes because that, is not developmentally appropriate in many cases. But you are maximizing the amount of learning that the child receives because you're building the family's competence and confidence, and you're supporting family. These are the 5 characteristics of coaching that I mentioned based on the work of Rush and Sheldon. And they talk about joint planning often, so planning together what coaching is going to look like, talking to the family about what are the ways you want me to support you, what are the ways you want me to give you feedback or help you, guide you, and what are the things you want to focus on. Always doing observations to make sure you see where the family's at, and that's a really important way to build a relationship with the family. Practicing with the family, so making sure you have opportunities to practice so that you can then give feedback, but always doing that in a way that is collaborative with the family. So you're not just saying, well, let me watch you do this, without you and the family deciding together, what are the things we might be working on today? What are the ways I can support you? And what are the ways you want feedback? And then reflecting on your own practice. Are there things you would have done differently? Are there things you might do, other resources you might access, so that you can keep building that relationship and supporting that family? This is just an example of a schedule that really focuses on joint planning and kind of building that relationship with the family. I'm not going to go over this. You have the slides. But one thing that we often hear is that even just initiating the coaching process is really powerful because it sets the stage for what coaching is going to look like. But it can be new and different when you are starting family coaching, especially if you used to do mostly child-directed supports. So we often give like a general guideline, and this is the one that Rush and Sheldon provide, that talks about setting the precedent, explaining the purpose and rationale for why we're coaching, talking about the expectations with the family, identifying priorities, resources, concerns, interests, always identifying child interests and family routines. Again, knowing that families might not call them routines, but they are what we would call routines. And then supporting parents in identifying their priorities, and then supporting parents in addressing their priorities. And then always at every level including caregivers in the process of identifying what coaching is going to look like. This is another example of a schedule. And then the other thing we talk about often is when you're supporting the family, especially around specific strategies or practices, which may or may not be what you're doing with families at any given point, but sometimes you are going to be supporting families in implementing specific practices across the day or implementing specific strategies. You always want to think about what specifically you're teaching, and then when and what the family is teaching, and guiding the family and thinking about what they're teaching, then helping the family think through when they're teaching this, like when throughout the day. And oftentimes it's during, interactions that are already going well, because we wouldn't teach during interactions that weren't already smooth. But what you might be focusing on is supporting the family and making routines or making interactions more smooth. If there's a time of day that's very chaotic, that isn't working for the family, then that might be what you address. And then always thinking through, how are you going to support, what is the family going to do during those interactions? What are the strategies? What are the things that the family's going to do to support the child's social emotional competence? I don't know what happened with the formatting, but that cute picture is blocking the words. And so I'm just going to move it. So these are just some specific things to think about, which really, this is kind of a compilation of research, a compilation of different family coaching strategies and approaches that we've thought about. But family coaching is always brief, but it's focused. So it's very brief, but focused on, very intentionally focused on something. Always, always around building capacity. So building the family's capacity, supporting their confidence and competence so that they will be doing all this when you're not there. Always embedding into what the family's already doing, and always collaborative. Always, always thinking about monitoring what's happening and monitoring progress in a way that's collaborative, and then monitoring coaching. This coaching continuum we give just as an example. It's definitely not something where you have to like go step by step, but it is helpful for thinking about like all the different ways you might be coaching when you're working with families. And you might do things like modeling something while the parent watches you, if you're talking about a specific practice or a specific way of interacting with the child. We often say keep that to a minimum though, because we want you to support the family where they're at. So watching what they're doing and then guiding them in whatever practice you're teaching them. Prompting and supporting while the parent engages, observing and providing feedback, observing and providing feedback after the activity or after the interaction, and then reflecting between visits on how things went between visits. These are some specific coaching strategies you might use as well. So modeling with the child, like I said, that's something that you would do at minimum, if ever really, because really you want to be supporting the family where they're at. We often use video exemplars. Oftentimes families love those. You might do some role play with the family. You'll always observe and give feedback. Always, always give very specific feedback that's based on what you saw. Knowing that you're doing that in a way that's collaborative with the family. So you and the family are deciding kind of what the feedback will look like. Joint planning for what happens between visits, collaborative problem solving around issues that arise, supporting the family in reflection always, and then maybe providing written support as needed. This is an example of live modeling. Again, that would be something you would do at a minimum to support the family. Video modeling is oftentimes families love watching people. I love watching videos of things that I'm learning because it kind of helps me see it in action, and that absolutely can be something that you can use. Self-reflection. We have a big piece in our trainings around this, really focused on the practitioner's self-reflection, sometimes using journaling, but whatever it is, whatever supports the practitioner in engaging in self-reflection, doesn't have to be journaling, can be the checklists that we provide, can be however, it can be just, you know, setting aside time and really thinking through how it went as a means of reflection. And supporting families in reflecting on how far they've come, reflecting on their child's progress, can be really, really powerful for supporting families and for guiding your own practice as a practitioner. Journaling is something, like I said, that we've added to, that we really talk about quite a bit, because journaling is an evidence-based practice for supporting social emotional competence in many ways, your own mental health, your own ability as a caregiver, your own practice, professional practice. And so we do a lot of journaling when families are open to it and when families are interested in it. And it can really be a good way of supporting the family in their caregiving practices, and then also strengthening that relationship between the professional and the family. There's a ton of recent research that's come out and older research related to journaling specifically, but recently around journaling with families and how effective it can be. There are lots of different apps now and things out there that exist to support this. Lots of them are focused on supporting that collaboration, but there are lots of different tools out there that support ongoing journaling and reflection with families. As I said, if journaling is not what works for the family, there are many other ways you can engage with the family around reflecting on how far they've come, their child's progress, what they want early intervention, or what they want your family coaching to look like moving forward. And that can be just discussions, and that is something that you and the family can collaborate on and decide together. I believe I shared this as a tool. This is a tool that we created through Ashley McNish and I created with NCPMI. That is a tool that helps caregivers who are engaged in early intervention. So with infants and toddlers, think through what they're doing with their child and think through the practices that maybe they want to learn more about. So we use this reflection tool often with families. Okay, what I want to do, actually, we're going to skip this activity just because I'm looking at the time and I want to make sure, and I have a lot more slides to go through. But this is something I'm going to let you kind of read through it on your own. But I really want you to kind of dive into that reflection tool and think through kind of how you might use it in your practice and how it might be helpful. It is titled Infant Toddler Caregiver Reflection Tool because we created for use in early intervention. But it is not, it absolutely is something you can use with all families with young children. I went over a lot of these already, but reflection is something that, we've especially seen over the last 10 years as something that we know is critically important to include in your supports that you're providing families, and to be really intentional about making sure you're allowing time, allowing opportunities for reflection to occur. And we know that reflection is really important because for all of these reasons, it really supports capacity and competency building, supports confidence, the family's confidence. It encourages active participation. So when they're journaling or reflecting between visits, that is really powerful, and we know that's really important. Can help families really think through what are their priorities, what are their concerns, what are the things they want for the visits, for the family coaching. It can help families engage in open communication with their coaches. And it can be a useful way for parents to reflect on and caregivers to reflect on their own practices. There are lots of ways you can communicate to support reflection with families. And there are different types of reflective questions. Sheldon and Rush talk quite a bit about this in their coaching approach. And there are awareness questions, analysis questions that you might ask, alternative questions. So what are some other things you might do? Action questions. What do you want the next steps to be? And affect questions that are really about the emotional responses and what's happening for the child's emotions and the family's emotions. Okay, so I do want to do this one. This is the one I wanted to get to. I want you to just take a minute and think through what are the ways you currently engage in self-reflection in your practice? And what are the ways, that you do that? And you can share or not share. It's totally fine to not share, but if you want to share, you can unmute yourself or you can type it into the chat. But I do want you to think about it. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to think through. Okay. So it may be that you don't have time in your day for self-reflection, or you haven't created time. And so one of the things I want to really encourage you to do is to make sure there's time. And sometimes you have to be really intentional about setting aside time to engage in self-reflection. And maybe you already are, and yeah, it does take effort to focus on the positive. Absolutely. And if you already are, great. Maybe reflect on if it's working for you and if there are other things you can do to make sure you are continually engaging in self-reflection. These are some different things you might be thinking through and reflecting on. It might be your values, beliefs, and assumptions. We always want to reflect on those and recognize that they may be different from the families that we're working with. And we have to reflect on them so that we have awareness of what ours are, so that we allow for space for them to be different from the families that we work with, and make sure that we are able to still support families, even if they have different values, different beliefs. And being really careful in how we respond and making sure that we allow for flexibility in how we respond, and knowing that there isn't just one way of doing things. These are some other self-reflection tools that we always talk through and share. Journaling, of course, video self-reflection. So videoing yourself on a visit, or videoing yourself working with families, and then reflecting on how it went, what you might do different, what works really well, what you want to do more of, what you want to learn more about. Sometimes you have colleagues or peers who you can reflect with. Sometimes you use specific tools, like specific coaching tools that allow you, like the checklist, that allow you to think through, or work with families to help them think through what are the things that are working really well, what do they want more or less of. These are some questions that we talk through a lot: wondering, empathy, being really clear to point out the positive, to use that strength-based, and recognize that you don't have to have all the answers. Um, these are some questions to think through, to reflect on. A lot of times we talk about reflection if you have caregivers or families who aren't engaged in the process, who maybe want you just to come in and work with their child rather than really support them and work with them. These are different questions that we often share that can be really helpful for thinking through how to best support those families. And then the next strategy, so now we're pivoting away from reflection, talking about role play. Role play can be a really good way for you to support families in learning new skills, if that's something that the family wants to engage in. Always making sure there are opportunities for practice so that you can give families support and feedback. These family practice guides are available on ECTA, which is the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center website, available in English, Spanish, and there are videos. And so these are all about specific family practices. And you can just go to the ECTA website and type in family practice guides. And they have tons of these, which can be really good resources for guiding you in working with families. Always giving performance-based feedback, and knowing that it's like, I see this a lot, and sometimes it's not necessarily as genuine as we want it to be. So knowing that these are adults you're working with, and that performance-based feedback is kind of like descriptive praise, right? It is descriptive praise, but we want it to be that, and we want it to be very genuine and positively focused. So we're going to watch this quick video of Ashley working with a family, and I want you to just observe how she's using feedback.
Heard him say duh a few times when you were prompting that all done. I haven't heard him vocalize it before, so that was amazing. I'm noticing more attention, longer periods of interaction before he's kind of done. You're very intuitive, and you're noticing when he's done, and you're very patient, and then you're going in and offering those choices to keep that engagement going. There's a lot more back and forth, and he signed open today all by himself. How do you think his play is going?
I think it's improving a lot. He definitely needs to be guided a lot with play, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning it's not long that he'll be on one thing, but just helping him kind of learn how to play with toys properly is he's more interested in being helped to do that than he was a few months ago. Yeah. So sometimes it's good, I think, just to let him explore, and we can, but
yeah, you're doing a really good job following his lead. And I also like how I noticed when we're done, you're cleaning up to keep that concrete for what done means. Because now that we're starting to hear him say duh for done, you may start to initiate it.
right, that's true.
That is Ashley. Sorry. She's so wonderful. Sorry, something in my throat. Excuse me. Anyway, I love watching videos of her. She's so wonderful. And you can see how she gave that performance-based feedback in such a supportive way that really helped build that relationship with the family and was so genuine. You have a case study, so we're not going to do that. There also are making sure that you have lots of opportunities to motivate families and to engage with families so that they are using all these strategies in between visits. Can be really important. Always engaging in collaborative problem solving, joint planning is really important. This, we're not going to do this because you have a case study after this, which is the perfect way to kind of think through how to implement all these strategies. But you do have this caregiver planning form, which is a form that we use often in guiding practitioners and using support-based family coaching with young children, which really helps to engage with families and collaborate with families around what practices the coach is going to use and what they're going to guide the family in doing. Again, making sure that you're always using that strength-based approach and that understanding that you are always focused on building families' capacity. These are examples of how to embed in IFSPs. Other considerations are to really make sure you're thinking through the intensity and recognizing that intensity is about learning opportunities for the child. They're recognizing if there are competing interventions or other things that the family is experiencing that might be getting in the way of them engaging with your support-based family coaching. Making sure you always understand and know the family's priorities, resources, and concerns. Understanding the family's learning history, always engaging in self-reflection, and then seeking support as needed. I shared these. You have these with you that can be a really helpful way to think through if families are interested in like written materials, and not all families are, but if you have families who are interested in written materials, and we're going to talk about this last one, the BSP is Behavior Support Plan. We're going to talk about that next month when we talk about supporting families who have children with challenging behaviors and how to support families in preventing challenging behaviors from becoming severe and persistent. We're going to talk through all that next week. And yeah, that is it for today. I wanted to leave plenty of time for questions. What are your questions?
Hi, my name's Kearney. I'm an SLP at the Institute for Disability Resource Policy Practice at Up to 3. Anyways, I was just thinking on the self-reflection and the way that we encourage our families or our parents to reflect on their own skills and their own competencies. I just wondered if you had any advice about how to help a family not only reflect on their child's skills and their child's growth, but on their own personal growth.
Yeah. I think that's a great question. Yeah, and actually Ashley did that really well in that video where she was talking about how all the things that the caregiver was doing that were kind of new and that were so supportive. I think thinking about that, what Ashley did really well, which I find really helpful, is thinking about it in terms of that dyadic relationship. So what are the things you see different about how the child is responding to the caregiver, how that dyadic relationship looks, and ways that the child's social emotional competence has changed, has evolved, has grown, can be really powerful to point out to families and can really do that.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's a good question. What else? Other questions? Comments? Thoughts? I know Hannah told us, so the next meeting is October 28th. And that's when we will talk through supporting families around challenging behaviors too. And so we'll take a lot of the coaching strategies we talked about and talk about how to use those to support families in preventing challenging behaviors from becoming severe and persistent. Thank you all.
Thank you, Erin.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That was wonderful. And I loved that last example of Ashley. And just she was like communicating with the parent and then saying, parent, how do you feel about how your child is doing instead of telling her? So
Yeah.
I think that's really, and journaling and self-reflection, I think those are all really great tools.
Me too. Thanks, Anna.
Okay, well, we are going to go ahead and move over to our case study. We'll have a short presentation by Kearney just talking about a child and what they're going through, and then we'll go into breakout groups and just discuss a little bit of some possible interventions and strategies that this family and this provider can use to help this child. So let me pull up the slides.
Thanks, Hannah. I'm not crazy tech savvy, so if somebody else can run the screen, I always appreciate it. Awesome.
Okay. You see the slides okay?
Yes, everybody good there? Awesome. My name is Kearney Bennett. I am a speech pathologist, and I've been working at Up to 3 for about 5 years in early intervention. Up to 3 services, Cache, Box Elder, and Rich counties. I specifically work in Cache and Rich counties. The IFSP team members on this specific child's team that I'm going to be talking about today are myself, so I provide a monthly individual service. We have an autism specialist on the team that also provides that monthly individual service, an occupational therapist, monthly individual service, and then our service coordinator who's coordinating those services and transition. So on the next slide, I'll just tell you a little bit about this kiddo and his family. The family is made up of mom and R. They live with mom's parents in a small town west of Logan, so in Cache County. R is an only child. Mom does work from home and she watches R during the day while she's working. She did recently undergo court appointments for full custody of R, and dad is in jail and not in the picture for this family. At the last IFSP meeting, and across the last couple of months, mom has brought up concerns about R's tantrums and his potty training. All other aspects of his development were manageable for her at that moment. So she felt like communication, eating, and sleeping were not keeping her up at night currently. It was his tantrums and his potty training. He is 31 months old. He has been enrolled in Up to 3 since March of 2024. And then, so we just hit 6 months. And then he does have a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. The routines that mom really likes focusing on or wanted to focus on at our last update was that moment after he wakes up. So he tends to be super angry for 15 to 30 minutes after waking up. No matter what mom does to help him, he is a mad kid. Potty training is a big one for her at the moment. So R knows when he has a dirty diaper, but he isn't yet recognizing a wet diaper. He is starting to sit on the toilet when he's asked or prompted to do that. Some routines that involves R's grandparents that they live with. So they often will give in to more of his tantrums. I mean, we can imagine any grandma and grandpa will do this a little bit more. So his behavior is pretty difficult to manage when they are around, but they have a lot of time together. And then playtimes. He is generally a happy kid, so this is a really good time for them to work on some communication and some social play skills, and a time that mom identified that they have a good connection and good back and forth happening. Here's a little update about his latest assessment. So these all happened in August, just a month ago. So we started with the ages and stages questionnaire, and in the cognitive and the receptive and expressive communication, there were mild delays there. And then the social emotional portion of the ASQSE showed a severe delay. Next, we did the APS. The cognitive section showed a mild delay, so matching up with that ages and stages. The social emotional showed a severe, and then in the social communication portion of the receptive and expressive language showed a moderate delay. And then we did the ASQ-SE, so the social emotional screening portion of the ASQ, and that showed a concern. So it just needed to be above 85 to show concern. And then our occupational therapist did an adaptive clinical observation, noted a mild delay for concerns with selective eating. He's made a bunch of progress in his sleeping in his own bed and falling asleep by himself. But eating was still of a concern there. I'll go through these present levels for you since mild, moderate, and severe don't sit super well in my head of what does that mean. So the present levels that we just wrote for this kiddo in cognitive, he can attend to an activity for 3 or more minutes. He searches for objects that are removed from his sight. He wasn't yet looking for a toy that was hidden, like in someone's hand or under a cup. We were losing his engagement before he wanted to do that. He can match and name the colors red, green, yellow, and blue. He really likes age-appropriate books like board books. He can place a circle and square in a puzzle form. He likes to explore his surroundings. He's not yet matching like a square or a triangle to a picture of those shapes, or identifying a common object by their use. So what's something that you drink? He wouldn't give us a cup. In his receptive language area, so he does turn and he hears his name. He knows what his name is, so orienting to that. He will orient to sounds around him, like if somebody knocks on the door, he heads over, or he perks up and grabs mom, or people talking to him. He easily identifies favorite items around him, like if I said, "Where's your fish?" or if mom was asking him to point out a picture in a book, he would be able to do that skill really easily. He points to items that mom asks him about. He follows an instruction, but oftentimes mom has to repeat herself many times. Other times he completely ignores us like a 2-year-old would. If the activity is not ours idea, he doesn't usually attend to it. So sometimes it can look like he has a little delay in his understanding skill if he's not responding to an instruction or a direction, which looks a little bit like a fixation or maybe an obsession on a different activity. So some of the things that we're working on this area is him attending to a variety of games and to a variety of instructions. On the next slide, we go into his expressive. So the things he's doing, this is a bigger paragraph because this obviously talking was a big focus for mom early on, and he is doing a lot of good talking now. So he is eager to go back and forth with mom specifically during games of his own choosing. He loves turning the pages of a book and answering a question mom asks. He is willing to copy words he hears during a book share and even offer new information, like he would tell us about a color that he sees. He will comment or label something in a book using a single word. We are starting to see a little bit of a pattern of an obsessive activity as this book share. He is a little less eager to go back. The game is not his idea. Mom attempted to start a different game during our assessment, and oftentimes in our sessions. She was playing with the garden. She was doing some really funny things like putting a carrot on her head and letting it fall off. And he just wanted nothing to do with it, no matter how funny we thought it was. He just played his own way, went back to his books. Let's see. He uses around 20 to 30 words, which is great. He's turned into a little copycat. But we have noted that these words are not often used to meet his needs. If he wants to ask for something, he will cry or throw a fit first, and then go down the line of prompting with mom to see if he will eventually use a word. During our testing, he did this as well. He wanted to go upstairs. He tried to open the door and then had a meltdown when it was locked. He did not attempt to ask, even through our modeling, some choice of 2 questions. So some things we're working on is using specific communication to ask for help or meet a need instead of going to that tantrum or dysregulation first, and then being more flexible in play, playing a variety of games, asking for games with a word and keeping them going for many turns. And then this little social emotional blurb, he tends to use mom as a tool to get things rather than as a communication partner. He's not yet able to communicate his wants and needs super effectively, which results in meltdowns. They can last up to 30 minutes. While he can play some imitative games like a peekaboo game, he's not as consistent as we want. And then he does often throw his toys and he struggles to engage in a little bit of pretend play. Those are the present levels as they sit right now. So I'm just going to go into some of the concerns and priorities for mom. As we talk that tantrum and the potty training, and then later in the discussion with mom, she did add eating to that list of concerns, getting more and more nervous about his limited or selective eating behaviors. The family outcome that was noted is that mom really does want to participate a little bit better in playtime with him by giving him positive attention. So we wrote this goal that we would know it's met when she offers him 3 different playtimes where she gives him positive attention for 10 minutes before continuing with her work day or whatever she has going for her workload that day. He does often start with a pretty negative way to get attention, screaming, crying, hitting. Then mom will give him attention because she knows he needs it. So we're trying to flip the narrative on that one to give him the positive attention before he has a meltdown. And then some of these other outcomes, things that we're wanting are to do, participating and engaging for at least 10 minutes in playtime, copying actions and play ideas of others. So trying to work on that fixation or that rigid play just a little bit. Sharing emotions in a more appropriate way during playtime. We wanted him to go up to mom and ask for help more often than having a fit or a tantrum. Eating regular and consistent meals, so 2 to 3 different foods, 2 out of 3 meals per day. Expanding his food repertoire, so touching, tasting, and eating 6 new foods. And then potty training by following that 2-step instruction to go and sit on the potty or to and stay or after with washing hands or something like that. So that's kind of a peek into the family's outcomes and his outcomes specifically.
Awesome. Thank you, Kirity.
Yeah.
So we will be heading out into breakout rooms, and I'll let you all have a minute to ask questions of Kirity if you have any. But for our groups, group 1 with Betsy and Debbie, if you could focus on different strategies that could be used to suggest for universal support. So maybe more of helping structure the environment in a different way or giving more of that positive descriptive feedback, anything with tier 1. And then the second group on Keto and Aubrey, if you could focus on tier 2, a little bit more focused support. And then Mandy and Janet will be tier 3, more specialized, individualized support for this child. And the support is generally help with communication to limit tantrums, help with potty training, and help with eating new and more foods. Is that a good sum up, Kirity? Okay.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
Perfect. So we will head into breakout groups. And if you could take a minute to introduce yourself, stay on camera, we would love to see that. And I will move Kirity into each of the breakout groups for a few minutes, just so you can ask any questions that you have. And we will come back around 2:20. Share one or two and just share 1 or 2 things that your group discussed. So we will start with Betsy and Debbie's group with tier 1. If you just want to share 1 or 2 strategies that you discussed.
Betsy, do you want me to share or do you want to share? You're on mute. You want me to share? Okay. All right. We had a really rich discussion, and I want to thank everybody who was in our group. I think one of the big things that I thought was something that I think would be really helpful. Kearney, and I don't know if you've included, this is something we did right as we were getting ready to leave, is just including grandparents in the visits. So there's consistency throughout the caregiving, if grandparents are giving in, are they learning the strategies that you're doing to help the family be supported and be consistent with their caregiving of the child? So attacking that through a strength-based approach, I really loved that. Some other things, and Kearney, you were in there, we talked about the if-then statement. With potty training, I think that was one of our biggest. Amanda had said that in their group, they have a potty readiness handout where they kind of go through that with parents. And maybe if he's not ready to be potty trained, which is okay. Are the parents not potty training him? Are they potty training him because they don't want diapers anymore, or because most kids are trained at that time? That maybe if you had a checklist that you and mom filled out together, you could work on things like pulling up his pants if he's not able to do that, or unzippering, or some way of indicating that he needs to go, either through sign language or a picture exchange of some sort. But maybe he's not ready for the actual potty, but he might be ready for activities leading up to potty training, which I thought was a really good idea. And Amanda had that, if you did that readiness check with them, so that we were getting him ready for potty training, maybe in a way that mom could see, oh, we have to do this, this, and this, like the steps prior to, which I thought was good. Another thing was just some sort of either sign language or picture exchange. So with that he could communicate more regularly with mom, might be good. And then we also had with the sleeping, he wakes up, and Sue thought it might be a good idea to find strategies maybe that are consistent through his wake up routine, turning on the light slowly, giving him a back rub, weighted blanket or something like that, since he's having meltdowns when he wakes up, deep pressure, away from mom, activities that maybe they could do consistently wherever they were, at a hotel or at home, or when grandparents were there, that were leading up to waking up much slower than just woohoo, get up. Because so you could use a story, a song, since he loves stories, a song, something that would help him wake up to not be so grumpy. Is anything else, Sue, or anybody, Julie, that we need to talk about? Okay, we're good.
Those were awesome strategies. Thank you for sharing. And then Aubrey and Ankita's group.
So we have discussed different strategies. One was that not to introduce all the new foods at the same time that could make the child feel overwhelmed. So introducing one new item with the already familiar food item so that the child has the opportunity to explore that. And then also not telling the child like to eat the whole thing, but can be like playing with the food and then having a bowl next to it, like just touching it and putting it in the bowl and saying that I am all done. And that way there was like touching and eating. So touching can be done. And another one was like for potty training, we mentioned that to understand first that what kind of diaper the child is wearing. If it is fully absorbing, then the child may not understand when he is peeing. So to move to the next level and letting the child understand when he is peeing and kind of feeling uncomfortable so that he sense that. And then other one was that also before setting him in the like for the potty training, kind of like having that energy burn, so playing something before that, and then as well as having some kind of like activity with the mother so that he sits and focuses over there. And
play with the mom while sitting to gain attention. And also we need to see what kind of distractions are available to minimize that, and especially light and sound, to take care of that environment and providing like a safe and consistent environment so that the child sits and pays attention of the thing that he's supposed to be doing. That's all. And another one, okay, that's all. And also we talked about like having like scripted stories. So when we are talking about the food item, we embed the item in the within the story so that the child is kind of familiar what the food item they are going to introduce in the week, and read about it and learn, and then introducing it in real. That's all. Are there anything else that we talked about?
That's great. Thank you, Ankita. And then Mandy and Janet, if you just want to share real quick 1 or 2 things that your group discussed.
You're on mute, Janet.
Ezra, do you want to share?
Yeah, I can share a couple. We talked about your blood sugar drops when you're sleeping, so maybe providing a snack first thing when the kiddo wakes up to try and level that out and increase happiness levels. And a skill called behavior momentum. So have your child do some tasks that they are good at, that they'll enjoy. Can be simple things like clap your hands, and you're going to cheer them on. Put your hands on your head. Oh, good, you did it. I can do it too. And then after 3 to 5 tasks that are simple and that they can follow through with easily, then throw in something that's a little bit more difficult. And finally, we talked about potty training a little bit, and all of the suggestions will be included in our notes, but there is a potty training book called Potty Train, Chug Chug Poo Poo, that would be a fun addition to the bathroom routine.
And there was a suggestion of the Seattle Children's Hospital toilet training for children with autism that's apparently really good too, for the IFSP team to watch and then present the strategies to the families.
This is all amazing feedback. Thank you all for your participation and for sharing and just sharing all of your information that you have. So if you took notes today, make sure to send them to Faustine. The email, I believe, is in the chat, and if not, she'll be sending a follow-up email in a couple days. So you'll have it through there. And make sure to fill out the survey so we can send you a certificate of attendance. And our next session will be October 28th. Have a great rest of your day.